everyone. Welcome to another episode of Getting to the Bottom Line, where I'm your host, Stephanie Smith, owner of New Light Financial Solutions, where we offer outsourced CFO services to small business owners, helping them generate more cash in their business. And we do this by looking at 16 financial drivers that impact revenue, profit, and cash flow. But outside of those drivers, I know that there's lots of things that influence revenue, profit, and cash flow. So this is why I've started this podcast so I can give everyone a different perspective on the things that impact their bottom line. So I am so excited to have with me today Nancy Zare, who is also known as the Sales Whisperer. Nancy, I'm so excited that you have joined me. Actually, again, we've recorded once and had some issues, so we are recording a second time. So, Nancy, just tell me a little bit about how you got into what you're doing.
So candidly, Stephanie, I never wanted to do selling. As a child, I thought sales was icky and manipulative, and it was that used car salesperson that came to mind, and that wasn't going to be me. However, my parents had a stormy marriage. And I, as a 10-year-old, saw a TV show in which Father Knows Best did an intervention and he helped quarreling children get along. So I tried this on my parents, and surprise, surprise, they let me. At the end of this conversation, I turned to my dad and I said, "Here's what to do so mom will feel loved." And I turned to my mom and I said, "This is what you do so dad will be respected." And notice
Hmm.
that the words changed. And that has become the basis of how I help people make sales by adjusting your language to match your prospect. Who knew that that was the key to good selling?
That is so interesting and also a little sad that you had to do that as a child, but you figured it out and you helped them, which sounds great. So tell me, I know you have your own system. Tell me a little bit about it and what you do.
Yes, it's called a likability. That's like with an A in front of it, because it's not about popularity. It's about, again, using words that allow the other person to say internally, "Wow, you get me, we're alike." And when people feel that you get me, we're alike, they relax. The trust builds. The sales resistance, we've all got sales resistance, it drops away, and that opens the door to doing business together. Hence, a likability is a system for helping you make more sales by speaking the language of your prospect.
Well, how do you decide what that language is?
What a great question. It turns out, just like love languages, many of us know that there are a number of love languages. Well, there are different personality styles, four of them, and those correspond to the languages of your prospect. Now, we are a combination of all four, but usually one is dominant. About 30% of your prospects, they just have one style, and that's their go-to style for everything. But 70%, and that's bigger than the majority, 70% go between two or more styles. So, Stephanie, they start off in a very benign social style, right? All smiles and hugs and warmth and, let's get to know each other. But when you ask a business question, zip, they go into their business style. And that business style might be more thoughtful, more careful, more conservative, or it could be very, let's get it off my plate, let's go for it. And it could be quite impulsive and spontaneous. So it pays to be able to discern which style your prospect is speaking from.
That makes a lot of sense. So, how do you, when people work with you, what are you helping them decide what this style is for the people they're speaking to? Are you giving them the tools they need to figure it out on their own? How does it work?
Both. I started off because I have a background as a college educator. I started off with the notion I would teach people how to read somebody's style and apply these skills. And then I found out, again, because there are 4 different styles, that a number of people want it done for you program. They don't want to have to learn it. They want to just like wipe their hands and say, go for it. And so, yes, I have a done for you service as well. And there are 3 applications of these skills. The first is I actually will read somebody's style and coach you on what to say and do to build rapport and make the sale. A second application is the teaching of the skills. So let's learn it and you grasp it and develop the skill. And the third application is let's find your ideal client profile. Who's that buyer persona? If you give me 3, 4, 5 of the favorite people to work with, I will read their style, find where they overlap, that sweet spot, and then create a very comprehensive picture of that buyer persona, complete with what motivates them, where are their fears, what do they want, and of course, the words to use that will connect quickly and authentically with them.
That sounds awesome, right? Because we're all trying to find our ideal clients, and our client avatar always comes up in every conversation as you're in business. So you help people do that. But how do you read them? Are you meeting them in a conversation? I mean, what does that look like?
So the way you read somebody's style, there are 6 key indicators that you can use. The first is visual. What do they look like? How are they dressed? What are their accessories? Because the colors they use, the fabric that they might be wearing, the accessories, are they heavily made up? Do they have facial hair? If a man, etc. All of these are indicators about their style because the way we want to project ourselves is consistent in how we look. A second indicator is our vocal qualities. I mentioned that 70% of people will switch styles, especially when they go from social to a business decision. Well, you can listen and hear that their vocal qualities change. So the person who is energetic and excited and talking very fast becomes quieter and slower and more reserved. Well, that's an indicator. So that's the second one. The third is behavior, how they behave. And of course, you need to actually view them over time. The fourth is how they write. And so you may be corresponding or sending messages back and forth. The fifth is how they post on social media. And this is, Stephanie, where you can identify someone's style before you meet. And this
Mm.
is so crucial because you can go into that first conversation having kind of a bird's eye view about what their style might be, and therefore be all on your toes to adjust right from the start. And that really raises a likability. And the last one is decorations, how they decorate their space. And some of it is what they have like behind us. Or when you actually meet in person, you can see if you're one of those people who makes home visits, you can see how they decorate their work and living space.
That all sounds very good, right? Like picking up on these little nuances. And I want to say I've seen a lot of these different like personality types, right? These tests that you take and the assessments to figure out where you fit in the things. And some of the things you're talking about shows up there. But I love what you're doing and trying to get people to um, see the other person a little better, right? We all want to be noticed. But I do have a question. You were talking about how looking at how people post online. Have you felt or do you feel like AI has kind of changed that a little bit, or they're using AI to people, a lot of people are using AI, right, to help them post on social media, which almost makes yourself a little less authentic.
You're so right. Because AI is very generic. I call it vanilla. And most of us are not vanilla type people, right? We've got, a little bit of butterscotch, maybe a streak of chocolate or strawberry, mixed into the vanilla. And so when we post in a vanilla-like way, it's not us. We're not coming to, show up, etc. So here's a little trick that I use on social media in order to find someone's style. And that is, I look for how they recommend somebody else.
Mm.
So if you, on LinkedIn, there is a section called recommendations, and there's two parts to it, what you've received and what you give. Well, I go to what you give because Stephanie, you can't have AI write your recommendation for someone else. You're going to have to feed it the values and the qualities that you like and appreciate in that person. Well, those words that you choose to use, those qualities, are an indicator of your personality style. So that's how I find, and I go through the AI maze, and I actually find the treasure chest there in the puzzle.
That's really interesting. And what a good strategy. Because yeah, you want your recommendation to be at least a little authentic, right? I can't say that I've never used ChatGPT to help me write a recommendation before, but I still, you're right. You have to feed it the things that you want to show up. So that's really interesting. Do you use LinkedIn a lot to help people find these personalities?
I do. It is my playground. So, audience, if you are interested in any of this, I do post quite frequently, 3, 4 times a week. And I also have live events on LinkedIn. So, come join me there, and you're going to learn a lot more about personality style. And specifically, I teach people again how to look at somebody's photo. And again, AI can doctor it up, but there are so many telltale clues about someone's style by looking at their photo.
Hmm. What kind of things?
Their smile.
Ah.
Okay, so there are 4 types of people. There are 4 types of smiles. One
Hmm.
smile is smug and confident and assured, and it's cocky. Yeah, I know we're both kind of putting our shoulders out and making faces because that's one style. The second style is this warm, oozy, like they kind of want to reach out through the two-dimensional screen and put their arms around you and give you a hug. It's and their eyes crinkle, and yes, their mouth is, wide open, and you just feel their warmth. The third smile, it's pleasant. They're looking at the camera, but they're posed. You can tell that there may be a little tension around the smile area because their lips, because they've been told to smile, but they don't yet feel it inside. Why? Because they need to meet you and be formally introduced. So they're more reserved. And the last smile, it's not a smile. It's a frown or a grimace or oh, please, it's a serious face. Just get this over with. I hate to be photographed.
Mm. Isn't it hard though with photos on LinkedIn because we all want professional photo, or if you go to get a headshot, like can you still see those things with the headshots?
You can. And what's interesting, one of my colleagues is a professional photographer, does headshots for businesses, and he's very good at bringing out, that side of the person. But remember, when you take a headshot, there you get, I don't know how many different choices, right? But at least a half
Hmm.
a dozen or more choices. Which one did you choose? Did you choose the one that is very relaxed and natural and warm, or the one that's more posed and more formal and reserved? Did you choose the one that's serious, or the one that's, bubbly and, or the one that's a little smug and self-assured? So again, you're putting up something that represents you, hence it's your personality style.
Do you ever use your system for people to find out more about themselves?
Oh, yes. In fact, although I'm very buyer centric, meaning I help you identify and understand how buyers buy. In fact, I have a video course by that name, How Buyers Buy. It helps to know your own style. Why? Because we project our style onto the buyer. We assume that if we're the person who needed to be very thoughtful and get a lot of information and make a very smart decision, that our buyer will need a lot of information also. Well, our buyer might be the one who is like, I don't want the details, I don't want the facts, just tell me what it's going to cost and when can we get it done. And you're like thinking, but wait, you don't understand. You haven't figured out. No, 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 no. They're ready to buy. So yes, it's important to know your own style and how that impacts the selling process.
That's so interesting you say that because I immediately think of the difference between me and my husband because I am that person that's like, just give me the facts. I don't want to give you a lot of fluff. I don't want all of that. I just want to know what I need to know and move on. And he's the opposite. So he'll start to write a text message or an email and it's got like tons of information in there. And I come around and I'll be like, just delete all this and give people a shorter message. But it is something that you'd think other people want the same things you want. So knowing the amount of information someone else wants would definitely change the way you speak to someone. And we've done that a little bit with some of our clients, knowing like one client we had in the past was very much like me. So it was, let me make sure I get to the point. Um, but it makes a big difference to know and even just recognize that there are differences
You're
between
right.
us.
And, I thought you were actually going to ask something around, does this affect personal relationships? Because one of the biggest benefits my clients will report, not only do they make more sales, because they do, right? When you understand someone's style and you've dialed in the ideal buyer persona, you're actually going to close over 50% or more of your prospects because they're the right people and
Wow.
you're the right match. But it also impacts personal relationships because just like you were mentioning, you and your husband are almost opposites. This is the way it is with personal relationships or even business relationships. If you've got a partner or maybe somebody else you work closely with, it's a good idea that they actually have different skill set and a different approach than you. However, because of that difference, you may feel some tension. Hence, that's going back to my story about my parents. That was
Mhm.
exactly it. Yes, they loved each other, but they also had a very different approach to how they related to one another, how they made decisions, and that made them butt heads. And once you understand these stylistic differences, it's not personal. My dad wasn't trying to make my mother feel unloved, and my mother wasn't doing things to make him feel disrespected. And so you realize it's not personal, it's style. And all of a sudden, you can pull back, you can kind of get this overview, and it changes how you feel.
Changes your perspective. Yeah, and I like that a lot. And I think a lot of it's just awareness, right? That there is a difference and not just assuming that everyone is just like you and wants the information you want. So I like that a lot. But I want to revisit talking about how this impacts your business, right? Because we're here talking about how this influences your bottom line. I'd love to hear. I know you mentioned a stat a minute ago, which was amazing. You close more deals. Is there what impact other than that, or if that's it, or what's your biggest success story you've seen as someone takes this approach to start doing sale, using it as part of their sales process in their business?
Yeah, several stories come to mind. Well, one is a client, this was very early on, who looking from January of one year to the January of the following year, found that she had increased sales 270%. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was a huge difference. But of course, she made her baseline was probably on the lower end when we started working with each other. Another person comes to mind, and literally he was closing 90% of prospects. And you're saying to yourself, holy moly, how could that happen? It's because he changed, he knew now who his ideal prospect was, and he began targeting deliberately through his messaging those people. Hence, he was attracting the right person, and it was natural for him to close because it was a good fit. And the last person that comes to mind was a fellow who he dealt with all personality styles. He was a home stager, home and did photography to help in the real estate world. And so he was dealing with people of all styles. He couldn't really choose who he was going to work with
Hmm.
because he'd be hired by the realtor to go to that home and take the pictures and do the staging. So he absolutely despised working with people who were chatty because that wasn't
Mm.
his style. He was a work professional. He wanted to get the work done and go in and go out. Well, when he understood personality style, all of a sudden he would sit at the kitchen table now with that homeowner who was chatty and have a cup of tea. And guess what? he not only, of course, made better sales with the realtor who hired him, but he now got referrals from the homeowners because of his mannerliness and his personality style.
Oh, I love that. Those are all really great stories. And a couple of the drivers that we look at, I mentioned at the very beginning, is obviously like leads, but then it's after that. What happens with your leads, right? Is your conversion rate and how many of those leads can you close the deal with? And I feel like everything you're talking about fits into that bucket, right? We're wanting to be more relatable and tell the right story in the right way so we can increase our conversion rate and make more sales. And it sounds like you're helping people do exactly that, which I think is just wonderful.
Right, right. And it all starts with, making sure that you know who your ideal prospect is. What is that style? It's usually a blend of two or more styles. So, 50% of this, 40% of that, and 10% of the third item. So you need to know what those percentages are and which pieces kind of get melded together to create your ideal buyer persona. And when you know that, Stephanie, now you know the words to use that will authentically draw that person to you. Hence, generating leads becomes a lot easier. Writing your posts on, social media, email campaigns, all of this becomes better to do, more effective, effortless when you have the buyer persona in mind and the exact words to use.
And of course, we all need something to make our lives easier in the world of sales and business and social media and every hat that we have to wear as business owners. So, what a great thing you're doing for everyone. I love that we had this conversation. This was so good. I want to ask if someone was listening today and you wanted them to take away just one piece of information of everything we've talked about, what would it be?
That people are different. Again, it goes back to the fact that we have a tendency to project our style onto the prospect. And remember, there are four distinct styles. Yes, we're a blend of all four of them, but in different amounts. And therefore, you really want to speak the language of your prospect. And if you've ever felt rejected, like, oh, it was the wrong person, or they rubbed you the wrong way, whatever, it's probably because people are different. And again, you were dealing with a personality style that isn't authentic or part of who you are. It's not something that comes naturally to you. So when you identify your style, know who you're trying to target, you're going to have a much better time of doing that.
I love that. I feel like my takeaway is similar to yours, is just awareness, right? That not everyone wants to be talked to just like I do, right? And just opening your eyes to look for those things amongst your clients, of people you talk to, and just being aware that some people are chatty and some people are not chatty. And figuring
Stephanie,
out who you should be chatting with.
exactly. And so, the thought comes to mind. I know often people give, quote, a freebie, it's in a podcast, but what comes to my mind is something they've never given away before. So listener, if you got paper and pencil, please write this down, because I don't know how else you're going to find it. But it's a bit.ly. So you know how bit.ly, it's a shortened form. So bit.ly/ICP, oh no, it's quiz ICP. I'm sorry. And so this is a quiz for identifying your ideal client profile. So
Mm.
quiz ICP.
I will add that to the show notes for anyone who wants to find it.
Okay,
But I
because
love that. And my next question to you would be, if someone does want to work with you or learn more about what you do and your system and everything like that, where's the best place for them to find you and connect with you, wherever that may be?
LinkedIn. So, go to LinkedIn. It's Nancy Zare, all one word. If you spell my last name correctly, it rhymes with care, starts with a Z for the last letter of the alphabet. You will find me and we will connect. And again, I will let me know how we know each other, because I will treat you really good if you're a friend of Stephanie's.
I love that. And I'm sure there's not a lot of Nancy Zares in the world.
No, no. My
Unlike
dad
me,
made up
Stephanie Smith, there's tons of me out there.
my dad made up the last name. So yeah, you're not going to find many Nancy Zares.
Oh, that's very interesting. There's lots of Smiths in the world, so you'll find a lot of me out there. And we're not all related. So, um, but if you are looking to find more about me and our business and what we do, you can find me online on our website, www.newlightfs.com. And I just want to say thank you so much, Nancy, for coming and chatting with me again. And I definitely enjoy our conversations. It's so good to hear from you and what you're doing and how you're helping people.
Yes, and remember, if you need financial help, if you want to have a good year, your best year ever, talk to Stephanie.
I appreciate that. Yes. We all want a good year. It's the end of the year right now, or depending on when you're listening to this, it's the end of the year as we're recording. It's starting off the year right, or wherever you're at in the year. We have to get started somewhere and just pay attention to what we're doing. And having the right sales process in place too helps with that. So, Nancy's the person you want to speak to help with your sales this coming year or anytime during the year. And I'm just so thankful again. Thank you, Nancy. This was great.
To your sales success.
And I just want to say thank you everyone for listening to another episode. That's it for this particular episode of Getting to the Bottom Line. I hope you will join me again next time. Bye, everyone.